So great, I don't have a question list, and we are going to just develop this whole conversation as we go along. The idea was to create a discussion around are there lessons from the Mahabharata? And to clarify, this is the Amar Chitrakatha version of the Mahabharata because Krishna just educated me that which version of Mahabharata are we going to talk about? I don't know any other version of Mahabharata. The only version I know is Amar Chitrakatha, and I think a whole bunch of people out here may not know the different versions of Mahabharata. So based on the Amar Chitrakatha version of Mahabharata, are there some serious business lessons? Are there analogies to the corporate world? And what can we truly learn? So one leading question is that you have these various characters in Mahabharata who can be conceived in leadership roles, right from Krishna, the strategist, to the Yudhishthir, the righteous leader, to Duryodhana, who was aggressive, according to me, should have been a good leader. There was nothing that went against him, except that history portrays him to be a bad guy. There is Bhishma Pitama, who he's like a group patriarch, unwilling to let go, and so on and so forth. So look at all these characters and see who could be the best role model for a modern day CEO. So with that, Krishna, your interpretation of the various characters and how do you relate to them?
Thank you for that very interesting question, first of all. And it's always difficult to pick who should have been the leader, because I think the beauty of the Mahabharata is that it raises more questions than it gives answers. And it is we in this time and age who are left to try and find our answers, even construct answers that are relevant to us from the legacy that has been left us in terms of whether you would call it myth or history. With that preface, I would say, in fact, my pick, if I had one vote for who was the best leader of the lot in the entire character gamut of Mahabharata, I would say it was Ashwatthama.
Okay. Please portray Ashwatthama for us.
Ashwatthama, even in your Amar Chitrakatha version or any other version, is considered a warrior, a scholar, a man who has done absolutely no wrong, till supposedly that one night he goes around murdering people.
One disclaimer, she has an entire book on Ashwatthama.
Just one? Yeah, so I mean, mea culpa, he's a favorite, so I am rooting for my favorite here. But I think that, you know, the very fact that we can debate whether Ashwatthama was leadership material or not brings us to a question of what is a leader? Is it just somebody who's not done wrong? Is it somebody who spoke up at the right time when wrong was being done? Or is it somebody who used a broader environment, a competitive and very competitive environment, if you were to borrow a business term, to try and make their way ahead? So I think that brings us to a very fundamental question of whom you would consider a leader before you even pick one and say, this is the best leader. Every one of them portrays a very different leadership quality, but every one of them also brings with it the flip side, which is that the best of leaders have certain flaws. So yeah, I think it lends itself to a very interesting discussion on whom would we pick as a leader and why. So that's my personal favorite, but yeah, hey, I have a vested interest. Even before that, what would we consider a good leader is something we probably need to think about.
Maybe Nilesh can do that. Who is a good leader? And you can then look at the various characters and say, who is the right role model from Mahabharata to be a good, mimic from?
I work in Kotak Bank, so I'll consider Uday Kotak as a good leader. When I joined Kotak Bank, I asked Uday what is his philosophy, and he combined Ramayana and Mahabharata. He said there are 2x2 quotient. One, a Ram quotient, where your goals are good, righteous, and your means to achieve that goals are also righteous. The other one is Krishna quotient, where your goals are obviously righteous, but in terms of means, you are street smart. You take certain liberties which Ram will never take. On the other hand, there are other two quotients, a Ravan quotient, where goals and means both are adharma, And then there is Duryodhan quotient, where goals sometimes are reasonable, but means are always disastrous. Now, if you're running business, try to be in Ram quotient. That will build business over a longer period of time. But since you are operating in India, once in a while, if you have to go to Krishna quotient, it is fine. But never ever be in Duryodhan quotient, never ever be in Ravan quotient. I think that philosophy defines Kotak Mahindra Group. It has worked well for Uday Kotak and Kotak Mahindra Group. And to some extent, we have copied that in Kotak Mahindra Mutual Fund, and it has worked well for us.
So why did we have to get Ram into this at all? I mean, is Krishna not enough?
Ram is Maryada Purushottam. Ram is the ideal. He always lived within a cage, within the restrictions given by the society, by the dharma of that time. Krishna lived outside the cage. He could always take a shortcut, a smart way, a street smart way. But Ram was Maryada Purushottam. And I think we need both Ram and Krishna together rather than trying to be only Ram or trying to be only Krishna. Especially in current environment where your goals should be righteous. But sometimes to achieve those goals, you need to take a street smart view rather than just, walking on the straight line.
Sure. Who's your favorite leader character in Mahabharata, and what is your idea of a leader?
इतना complicated question.
थोड़ा simple, आप आंसर simple दो ना.
यार देख तो वैसे ही लोग, we are holding them from the bar. तो उसके ऊपर तो इतना complicated question पूछ लिया. No, I think at various stages in life, various people can lead you to where you want to go, if you choose to. So the choice is yours. I don't think you can actually pinpoint and say, okay, this is my ultimate goal or ultimate person that I need to follow, Ram, Krishna, whoever it is. The key to life is that you are what you are, and you know what you want to be. And along the way, if someone helps you in their journey, which is fine. But I don't think the the ultimate aim should be either to become the Krishna or a Ram or any one of these. Those are just guidelines. Those are just things that you need to take support from. But I think it was Zen which said that if you see your parents, kill them. If you see Buddha next, kill him too. Because everyone has the capability of becoming a Ram, Buddha or Krishna. So the moment you idealize someone, the moment you say that this is what is my, subconsciously or consciously you're trying to be that, which I think is unfair to your being. So you are an individual and you will be Abhay or Nilesh or Krishna or whoever, or Mahalakshmi or whoever wants to be. And I think that's more important. I don't think it's important that you need to give so much of emphasis that you end up.
No, but you always look for role models, right? You say that, okay, this is a good model to follow. I mean, in everything we follow that. In business, you look at business models that work. For everything, you look for some inspiration, so you get a framework in terms of how can this be structured.
If it's a support, it is fine. You should not become that, because then you are denying yourself the possibility of becoming a Buddha. I think each one of us has a capability of becoming a Buddha or I think there was this, I was listening to this song from one of the Pakistani singers, and it says, Tu hi Shankar, tu hi, Pujari and Shankar, Main hi Pujari, Main hi Shankar. So I have the capability of becoming Shankar. I think each one of us has. So as long as you're using it as a support, and it's not overwhelming enough for you to, because then you're just a clone, and then you're just, I think each one of us, I don't think we should miss out on that. That'd be unfair to life, that'd be unfair to you, that'll be unfair to you as a human being. So each one of us has the capability of becoming a Shankar or a Buddha or Ram or a Krishna or it is in us.
Okay. Your favorite character? Please don't go on Abhay's lines.
So, given that I already work in the space of both leadership and ancient wisdom, it's probably a biased question as far as I'm concerned. So let me start with Mahabharata, right? So the Mahabharata itself, we always say कि दुनिया में जो भी कुछ हुआ है वो महाभारत में हुआ है और जो महाभारत में नहीं हुआ वो दुनिया में नहीं हुआ है, right? So starting with that premise, I don't think it's just Mahabharata characters that we should talk about. And as far as leadership is concerned, I believe that there are, and I am, Nilesh, pardon me, but I'm very against binary frameworks. They make me very, very uncomfortable, linearities and binaries. So I believe that हमारे यहाँ 3 तरह के leaders होते हैं. या तो आप ब्रह्मा हो सकते हो, so you're the creator, the classic startup guy. या आप विष्णु हो सकते हो, the preserver, the builder, somebody who looks at a business at X and says अच्छा इसको 4X कैसे लेकर जाना है. या आप शिवा हो सकते हो, who's the disruptor, the destroyer, the turnaround artist who looks at a business as it is and says, no, it's fine where it is, but it needs an orbit change. Can I break it down into pieces and rebuild it?
By the way, that is also one thing Uday Kotak often uses. This Brahma, every organization must have a Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva.
Absolutely,
Something else.
absolutely.
Sure.
So to me, it's a function of आपका core क्या है और organization को किस चीज़ की ज़रूरत है. So if the organization is at its founding stages, you need to start a business, you probably need somebody with a Brahma core. Otherwise, you need somebody, business has been built up, you need somebody to take it to the next level, it's a Vishnu. And you're struggling with the business, you know that it logically makes sense, but how do we reinvent the business? It's a Shiva. Coming back to the Mahabharata, I don't think I have a favorite leader there, but yeah, predictably my heart beats for Krishna and it bleeds for Karna. But yeah, between the two of them, I don't think there are, so leadership lessons are more in terms of lessons to be learned than role models to be emulated in the Mahabharata is how I believe. I also believe there aren't all good and all bad, so I don't think there is a superhero there. I think everybody is a shade of grey somewhere, and what do we want to pick out of it? So I'm not about blacks and whites and emulations, but yeah, so Krishna at one end of the continuum and Karna at the other.
Sure. You can probably bring on business lessons for leaders from Mahabharata. And also you talked about competition, strategy. Maybe you can pick on two, three of those ideas and tell us some lessons and side stories.
Possibly. No, I'm just going to share this thought that's running in my... Sorry, I don't think I need this, right? Yeah, I'm going to share the thoughts running in my mind from what Eika said, which is the whole idea of the whole progression. And the moment she talks about Krishna, the immediate thing that comes to my head is the whole idea of Schumpeterian creative destruction from a business cycle perspective, where you see Krishna as somebody who understands that the status quo of how things are, or the entire market structure is not at its optimal, most efficient level. So some degree of destruction and followed by rejuvenation, followed by a completely new systemic order is required for the market, or if we think of a kingdom as an economic unit and something that has to operate at maximum possible resource utilization efficiency. If you think of it as that perspective, he sees that this is not optimal, and so the whole process of war and rejuvenation is actually creative destruction, where you are trying to optimize the entire resource utilization pattern. That's just top of my head based on what Eika said. I think in terms of particular business lessons, it is very interesting to see the Mahabharata as, my core competence is strategic management and international business when it comes to the business side of things. So I always see the Mahabharata as a battle for resource management, control over economic resources, which then become a source of power, which I know is probably very Marxist in nature, but hey, that's how it is. But so from that perspective, I think it is possible to take away a lot of competitive lessons in terms of, again, coming back to my favorite keyword here, efficiency, utilization efficiency, coming back to issues like can the small take on the big coming back to issues even like how do you understand value creation and distribution of created value, which I think is a very important topic for us in a corporate context. So you have this whole process that you bring in, but then how do you distribute the value that is then generated as a result of that? And so I think many lessons are possible, but here I will admit my bias when I say many lessons are possible if you are willing to look at it from a rationalist perspective rather than only a spiritual perspective. I'm not discounting the spiritual lessons we get there, but I'm saying there are a lot of economic efficiency, value maximization perspectives that we can get if we are willing to take a rational approach to events.
Can you recount 3 stories? Can you recount 3 episodes or stories for us which bear out the best lessons for you from a business management perspective?
Oh my God, she's putting me on the line here, isn't she? 3 stories from a management perspective. Okay, since this is about leaders, let me start off with there. Succession issues. The whole idea of could the entire war, if we think of war as a negative thing that happened and not just a competition, could war have been averted if Dhritarashtra had actually resigned from his post as CEO/king and let the next line of leadership come up instead? My take? Yes, possibly. Then that brings us to the second
And
level.
who would that be? Because the whole war was about who should be the next leader.
Exactly. So that brings us to the next question. What are you going to use as your measuring characteristic of a leader? Are you going to use competencies, skills, or are you going to use legacy? What are the parameters you use to define leadership? In my personal view, Duryodhan was an extremely competent leader. Extremely, extremely competent. I know that probably myth history portrays him in a very dark way on many occasions. But let's think about it. Let's think about the instance when, we say the war began. Why? Because Krishna went to Duryodhana and said, please give the Pandavas at least 5 villages for them to rule. And he says, sorry, you're not getting 5 needle points of land. Why? Well, one way of interpreting it is that he is a power-obsessed maniac who is not willing to cede any power. Another way of interpreting it is to say that, boss, you had half a kingdom, you had an entire kingdom, you had an empire which you gambled away. What does that say about your competency to be a leader, a CEO, a king? I am sorry, I am not giving you any resources to work with because I do not think you have the competency to handle those resources. And that is very different from saying, I'm not giving it to you because I don't like your face. So that would be a second thing. When do you let go as a leader? What values do you seek in a leader when you are looking at succession? And then, of course, we get to the whole issue of for whom are you trying to use these resources and generate value? Is it personal gain? Is it because you are on a hubris trip where you want to be leader? Or is it because you actually take into account your stakeholders and see what permutation and combination, what are the competencies you can bring to bear on those resources to actually generate value for a broader set of stakeholders, and which in this case are the characters we actually never talk about in the Mahabharata, the common people. It's like Mahabharata is full of all these kings and warriors and queens who have their own agendas, but hey, they are kings of something. They are queens of something. They have a duty, they have a duty in corporate governance terms. They have something they owe their stakeholders. Is that actually being maximized? So, yeah, I think those would be my 3 takeaways.
Okay.
So I see it. Yeah? Okay. So here's how I see it. And again, like I said, they're just lessons to be learned. I don't think there's any perfect solution there that exists. But one of them is about managing your people in your team. So when Duryodhan decided that everybody was going to fight on his side because he was paying their salaries, the level of awareness of saying that, dude, your chief of staff, your general, wasn't going to kill one enemy soldier. Right? You had, in all your army, you actually had just one person who was fighting your cause. So, in that classic situational leadership grid of M1, M2, M3, and M4, you actually had just one person who was an M4, which was Karna, willing and able. You didn't deploy him because you couldn't handle the politics of your chairman. That's a Bhishma saying, I don't want this, I don't want that. But you're the CEO, you're sitting there, you know what's good for business. And yet you choose to not deploy, right? And frankly, by the time you actually got to deploying Karna,
There at least you had a CEO in Pandavs. There was no CEO only. Do you agree? There was no CEO in the Pandavs. They only had a McKinsey consultant in Krishna.
Not clear. Sorry? Nilesh?
I said, she is talking about Kauravs. Kauravs at least had a leader in Duryodhana. But the Pandavas didn't have a leader only. They only had a McKinsey consultant in Krishna. So,
4x4s and 3x3s.
they were just going by what the consultant was saying.
Actually, I love that analogy because that's my other favorite incident about this. Yudhishthir knew that, and look at the level of self-awareness of the leader in that sense. He knew he wasn't the most popular person. He knew he had an army, he was the underdog. He had a smaller army, lesser resources. He knew that he was personally very easily, very impulsive, very easily angered. So he had two choices. Right? He could either work upon himself and say that, I need to get myself to become better. But look at the smartness of that. So he walked up to Krishna and said, be my coach, be my chief strategist, and help me through this, knowing that Krishna would pull this off for him with complete awareness, strategic awareness, that he was the one who was going to be king. Right? So to me, the fact that Yudhishthir wasn't an able leader, or not a leader at all, and how he turned it to his advantage in the sense of bringing in a fabulous coach, excellent strategist, and democratizing power. So that was my other favorite incident.
So is strategy the most important thing then? Essentially the story about Krishna and Duryodhana and Arjun on either side, one on the side of the head and one at the feet, and Krishna asks, what do you want before the war? And Duryodhana says, I want the Yadav Sena, and Arjun says, well, I'm okay with just you. So it's really the strategic choice that in fact, Duryodhana had the choice, and he just made a bad strategic choice by choosing Yadav Sena because that was regarded as the best. And he said, ye gwala kya karega, isko to chodo. But it turned the other way. So
why did Duryodhana choose Yadav Sena and not Krishna? Because he already had appointed a McKinsey consultant in the form of Shakuni. Yeah. He had hired Shakuni for his consultancy. And that's why Shakuni advised him that go and get Yadav Sena, don't get another consultant, I'm already there. So you have to choose right mentor. And I think what Pandavs chose was under-19 cricket team of India, which went to Australia with Rahul Dravid as a coach. So I will call Rahul Dravid rather than McKinsey for Krishna. And both of them have a lot of similarity. So clearly you have to choose your coach correctly. If you end up with Shakuni with resources, you will end up in a results like Kaurava. And if you choose Rahul Dravid, even with resources of under-19 cricket team, you will go and win the World Cup dominating everyone.
your favorite story and lesson?
Sorry?
Your favorite story and lesson?
Story on?
On
Favorite story
your
and
favorite
lesson.
Mahabharata story and lesson?
Yeah, but
अब याद नहीं आ रहा, don't tell me.
no, see, there is no, like I said, I'm just going back to my previous Mahi Pujari, Mahi Shankar. So I don't think I look at all these epics as something that is so overpowering, and I appreciate the way you people are looking at it, and I'm wondering what Krishna and Arjun, if they are listening to this, would be thinking about all this. Did they really envisage all this and the dissection that we are doing on their strategies? I think it just came along the way, and they did things that they did. It's good for a debate to kind of
I love
try
it.
and
That's time to close the discussion then.
On this note, may I just add in a lighter vein? There's actually this, to sort of take on from what you've just said, there's actually this sort of scene in the Mahabharata which takes place much after the war, when Arjuna goes back to Krishna and he's referring to the Bhagavad Gita. And he's like, yaar, aapne us din battlefield mein mujhse kuch kaha tha, which was, it really resonated with me, but I remember some of it and I don't remember some of it. And I'm paraphrasing very crudely here, but before Krishna tries to recap, his first response is, हाँ, उस दिन flow में कुछ कहा था, I don't really remember what I said. And then he tries and reconstructs.
Where is this reference? Where is this reference?
It's actually there in Mahabharata. It takes place post hoc after the battle, after, you know, Yudhishthir has been once again appointed as emperor of the realm, and, you know, they've had that whole thing. There's this very casual afternoon when Arjuna is like, you told me a lot of things. I think I grasped some of it. I'm not very clear on the concepts. Do you care to sort of elaborate again? And he's like, I told you what I told you to get the job done. Now, please don't ask me what I told you then. So, I'm sorry, this is just a very light-hearted comment that comes on from what you just
That
said.
pretty much demolishes Mahabharata as also the conversation.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Surely I didn't sign up for this panel. Okay, any concluding thoughts?
I think there's just one more thing. Is this not working?
Yeah, you want a mic?
I'll take this. So I think there's just one more aspect of leadership particularly that I'd want to highlight, which is irrespective of whether you're the Brahma, the Vishnu, or the Mahesh, irrespective of what stage of the organizational journey you're coming in, irrespective of the challenges that are ahead of you. If there's one thing that differentiates a leader or makes a visionary leader, it's actually establishment of purpose. And the reason I like that is because think about it, Duryodhan ki army क्यों लड़ रही थी? They were fighting कि हम सुई की, like Krishna said, कि हम सुई की नोक जितना जमीन का टुकड़ा भी नहीं देंगे. What was Yudhishthir's army fighting for? Dharma over adharma. Eventually it was just a battle between two warring cousin families. But that establishment of purpose, which allows you to bring in that sort of leadership where people will lay down their lives for you. Right? Ramayana. Ravan's army was fighting to avenge the honor of a wronged woman, which is a very lofty purpose, no doubt. But Ram's army was fighting for good over evil. Right? Barack Obama. In his first election, his competitor, John McCain. We really don't even remember who his first presidential competitor was promising economic reforms, democracy, manufacturing, local jobs, etc., etc. I'm sure that is what Barack Obama was also promising transactionally. But he was about, yes, we can. So the purpose was about hope. Right? So to me, that is the other very key lesson that I take away from Mahabharata, which is that irrespective of the kind of leader you are, there are only two things that really make a difference. One, how aware you are of your flaws and strengths, and therefore what are you going to play to. And the other is if you're able to establish a purpose that's larger than, where the whole is greater than sum of parts. So really just those two.
Sure. Any questions?
I think everyone is waiting for
Everything suitably.
Yeah.
Sure.
I say,
So let's head to the bar.
Jabardasti
So thank you, the two beautiful ladies for
Thank you.
this entertaining, somewhat futile discussion. I'm sorry. But thank you all of you for joining us today. I really enjoyed the three discussions that I moderated and also the other discussions earlier on. And let's hit the bar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahalakshmi. Thank you to all our panelists for that very interesting perspective this evening.